Good morning. I know some of us are still coming in, but we also need to get started, so I'm going to do that. Welcome all of you to Professional Development Day 2016. I am Dr. Terry Junie, your new Assistant Superintendent Vice President of Instruction, and I am really happy to be here at Pasadena City College. This is quite a remarkable place. To give you a little history of me, I have been in the community college system for 27 years, a little bit more than that. I started as an instructor, both part-time and full-time, and spent over 15 years in the classroom. Then became a dean, crossed over to that dark side, and as an administrator, I've been a dean, an academic dean, and a chief instructional officer. PCC is actually the third college I've been at as a chief instructional officer. This gives me, I believe, a great perspective of the different ways that you can do things in the California community college system. I am quite excited to be at PCC. This is an eminent college in this state and in the nation, clearly, as we are vying for the Aspen Award. I am also really excited to be here today to kick off this great event. Obviously, we're going to have hopefully a really good conversation today, looking at data and talking about equity issues. It's not an exaggeration to say that student equity is one of the most important challenges facing the community colleges across the nation. Our very foundation is built on the idea of equal access and the ability equal access to a quality education and the ability for students to complete their educational goals to better themselves and to better the lives of their families. And we're falling short in that goal. The data basically shows that African American and Latino students are not being as successful as white and Asian students. And so that is what we will be spending a considerable amount of our time today talking about. We need to identify the obstacles, and then we need to find ways to remove those obstacles so that the community college and PCC can serve all of our students. In my short time here as a Vice President of Instruction, I guess about 3 months. I'm still on my honeymoon, so to speak. I've been pleased actually to see the efforts that are happening with the academic and classified senate and administrators in addressing the equity issue. And so I think today will be a very productive day with that conversation. I want to thank all of you for committing to spending the day today being involved in that conversation. And looking for ways that we can better serve all of our students. And now I would like to turn it over to Dr. Cynthia Olivo, our Vice President of Student Services. She's actually our new Vice President of Student Services, even though she's been here for a little bit longer than me. And before I yield the floor to her, I want to commend her on her leadership on this issue over the past year and beyond. Her passion and concern for our students shines through very clearly. And now she'll be sharing some information with you and her philosophy on this issue. Dr. Olivo.
Thank you so much, Terry. I really appreciate it. So I know many of you, we've been through a lot together. I've been here for 8 years. And so the 8 years that I've been here, I served as the Associate Dean for Counseling and Student Success Services, and then the Associate Vice President for Student Affairs, and now the Vice President of Student Services. I've led the Equity Project for 2 years. And so today what I'm going to do is provide you with an overview. So to begin, I'd like for all of you to think about a student. Think of a student from your past, somebody from a historically underrepresented group, such as an African American or Latino student, or someone from a low-income background. Someone who you learned through either your class or working with them in your program or service that they're the first in their family to go to college. Think about when they shared with you a time that they've overcome an obstacle. So I teach on Thursday nights, 6:30 to 9:30, if any of you want to come by, right on the third floor of this building. And just last week, a student shared that she did not have 50 cents to take the bus from Alhambra to PCC. She was putting 30 cents in, and she was thankful that she didn't get caught. I was talking with your academic senate president yesterday, and she has a student that she learned who takes public transportation from South Central LA here to PCC. And he also brings his bike because a portion of his commute includes cycling here. So think about a student who's overcoming these obstacles and persisting, and students that you're helping and that are succeeding. They are demonstrating motivation, they are demonstrating a desire to do better, to improve, and just think about them today. Put them in your mind. So a little bit about the Student Equity Program. Now, we just recently received funding, but guess what? Student equity has been around since 1991. It's amazing to realize that in our state, this has been an effort through legislation. Then finally, the Board of Governors adopted some actual practical measures for us to look at, like Title V law. And then our governor provided the chancellor's office with funding. So now across the state, we have $155 million. And our specific allocation at PCC is a little under $2 million. So there is a specific assignment that the chancellor's office gives us that all 113 colleges must follow. We have to look at these areas. Access to the college. What that means is we have a specific region that we serve. Ours includes 7 or 8 cities, from Temple City to La Cañada Flint Ridge, and then on this end, San Marino to a part of El Monte. So in our region, we have to track how many students from different groups live in this region and how many access the college, and then track achievement gaps. We also must look at course completion, basic skills completion, and then overall completion for the degrees and certificates that we award. And then finally, transfer. And here are the specific groups that we must track. So if any of you are interested in looking at these specific data, you can please refer to our student equity plan at our student equity website. And that's just www.pasadena.edu/studentequity. So once we look at these groups, we also apply some methodology to identify where the gaps exist. Now, it helps to also think about the national landscape for community colleges, because sometimes when you see the data and you think it's only happening here, it can be quite depressing. So consider the national landscape. For us, we have several experts who spend every day of their career researching community colleges. This comes from a book that was released last year called Redesigning America's Community Colleges. What they say is that community colleges are serving a disproportionate number of students from low-income backgrounds, historically underrepresented groups, immigrants first in their family to go to college, and nationally, fewer than 40% of students complete any type of degree and certificate within 6 years. Now, 6 years is one rule of thumb, but for the federal government financial aid purposes, they look at a 3-year timeline. The American Association of Community Colleges ranks the United States 16th in college completion rates for individuals who are between the age of 25 and 34 in the world. and our median income in the U.S. has declined by 7%, and a child born poor in the United States today is more likely to remain poor than at any other time in U.S. history. Now, the Aspen Institute, which there was a buzz on campus because guess what? In 2013, when I checked in with Aspen, out of the 1,200 community colleges, based on their metrics, we were number 600. In a period of 3 years, we made it to the top 10 because of our metrics and our outcomes with students. Yes, you can give yourselves a round of applause. And what Josh Weiner says in his book, What Excellent Community Colleges Do, Preparing All Students for Success, is that community colleges, we should take bold chances in order to increase student success, especially for African American and Latino students. So what does our data say? This is just a snapshot. Now, later on today, many of the instructional faculty in the room will be with their divisions for a significant amount of time, and you'll have a substantial time period in order to review your data. But what this is, it's aggregated for all credit divisions. So we have 13 divisions at our college. So what this tells us is, for African American and Latino students, they are experiencing the largest achievement gaps. When you look at course enrollment, for example, for Latino students, there are 250,730 course enrollments college-wide for Latinos. And compared to their white and Asian counterparts, there is almost a negative 6% achievement gap. For African American students, there are 22,000 course enrollments, almost 23,000, and there is a negative 10.4% achievement gap. So when you all look at our student equity plan at our website, you'll also notice that for students from low socioeconomic backgrounds, there's only one group that is experiencing, there's only one area where students from low SES are experiencing a gap, and that is in transfer. Okay. So this is a visual image of student equity. And today what we're going to try and do in your division meetings and your workshops is move from a deficit-minded frame. Some of us don't even realize we are thinking about what is wrong with the student or society in general that produces these results. We typically put all the onus on the student to succeed. But when we challenge ourselves to adopt an institutional responsibility mind frame, where we can control only what we do in offering services or support, then we can focus on these kinds of strategies that the Community College Research Center says are helpful to increase student success rates. So today, you're going to have an opportunity to participate in some workshops. And I would like to invite your Academic Senate President, Dr. Valerie Foster, to come and describe these opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So our keynote speaker today is Dr. Tyrone Howard. He is the Associate Dean for Equity and Inclusion and the Professor of Education, Director of Black Male Institute at UCLA. His recent publication is Why Race and Culture Matters in Schools, Closing the Achievement Gap. We invited him today for his expertise in urban education and to give us some tips and strategies on how we can help our students. So before we give him a warm welcome, let's give us a round of applause for all of the people who helped put on today. It was a tremendous effort. Everyone, tons of people were involved, and it's going to be an awesome day. And so let's give a warm of welcome to Tyrone, too. Thank you so much.
Good job. Good, can you guys hear me? Good morning, everyone. We got to do a little bit better than that. Good morning, everyone. All right, as soon as I can get my technology squared away here, we'll be ready to go. In 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We are on. All right. I'm sorry. I don't do the podiums. I have to talk. I have to walk. So is that okay with everyone this morning? Good. Okay. It is my honor and my privilege to be here with you this morning. I want to thank all the folks who are responsible for putting this on. PCC, you do phenomenal work. You know how I know is because I have been in the good fortune of being a professor at UCLA for the past 17 years, and I see a lot of your students at the place I work. So thank you for sending us amazing students. Give yourselves a round of applause for the work that you do. Thank you. So I'm always passionate when I talk about issues tied to students at community colleges because I, myself, am a product of many community colleges, right? And so one of the things that I learned the hard way, and I'm sure many of your students find out the same way, is that you can't hop from community college to community college and not think that they're gonna not find you, right? Especially when you default on loans. So I started at Long Beach City College and defaulted on a loan and thought maybe if I go to Compton College, the folks there won't find out. I got there, they found out that I was in default of loans there. So I thought, okay, maybe if I hurry up and go to Cerritos College, they won't find out, right? 4 different colleges I went to, right? So part of what you have to understand is your students are doing the same thing. Help them to understand that we have these things called computers nowadays. And they will track your financial misdeeds. And so understand that when I talk about the students that I'm going to talk about today, for me, in so many ways, this is a personal passion because I know and I can relate to a lot of the challenges that these students face, much like I'm sure many of you in this audience can relate to the students that you teach and support and mentor every single day. And it's getting more and more difficult for them. So before I get into them, let's talk about you for a second. I want to say first and foremost, thank you for your commitment. If you don't mind, this may sound kind of corny. Can you take about 7 seconds? Can you turn to the person to your left or to your right and tell her or him thank you for doing what you do? Can you let them know? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It is important for us to acknowledge each other in this work. I oftentimes say when we talk about community colleges, we are talking about the beacons of educational democracy. We're talking about the beacons of educational access and opportunity, right? Because when you talk about a community college, we take all comers. Doesn't matter what your GPA was in high school. Doesn't matter what your family background was growing up. Doesn't matter how well you did on tests. Doesn't matter how many AP or honors courses that you've taken. Doesn't matter if you've been out of school for 20, 30 years. Community colleges are truly that. They oftentimes are the essence of our communities. You come as you are. We don't hold that against you. And that's why you need to be applauded. I don't care if your title is classified staff, if you're part-time staff, if you're full-time staff, if you're full-time faculty, if you're part-time faculty. If you are here on this campus, you make a difference. If you are here on this campus interacting with students, mentoring students, talking to students, advising students, or just listening to students, you are making a difference. And for that, you need to be appreciated, you need to be acknowledged, you need to be sort of recognized for all the time that you invest in our students. So I always like to start off with my attitude of gratitude. My favorite book this summer was Brene Brown's Rising Strong, and I love this quote that Brene Brown has, and I think it relates to you. Because you're in the arena, you're doing the work. Brene Brown says, I want to be in the arena. I want to be brave with my life, she says. She says, and when we make the choice to dare greatly, we sign up to get our asses kicked. She says, we can choose courage or we can choose comfort, but we can't choose both, not at the same time. She says, and a lot of cheap seats are filled with people who never venture to the floor. They just hurl mean-spirited criticisms and put downs from a safe distance, right? You are in the arena because you do the work every day in the trenches, working, serving, mentoring young people, older people, and everything in between to help them recognize their potential. And there's always folks who sit on the sideline who think they know how to do your job, but they've never done it, right? Don't you love those people who always think they can do something better than you do, but yet they still don't have the courage to do it? So that's why we need to be acknowledged for having ourselves in the arena, for doing the work with students who are oftentimes what I refer to as the throwaway students. Much of what I'm going to talk about with you today means that you face and you deal with students every single day who have lots of obstacles that they face in their pursuit to be self-actualized. But you're in the arena, you're helping, you're committing your time, you're devoting your resources and your intellect to help students who oftentimes we have written off. And that's why, again, you need to be recognized and you need to be appreciated for this important work that you've done. All right, let's keep going. Let's talk about equity, right? We need to understand that we can't use a one-size-fits-all approach. And that's what we oftentimes do. We think if we use a one-size-fits-all approach that we'll somehow create a more balanced society. But part of what we have to recognize, and Cynthia talked about this earlier with regard to the gaps that exist between certain groups, is that when we have certain kinds of discrepancies, we can't give everybody the same thing. And I'd be willing to bet that what we have to move away from is this approach right here of looking at equality. Let's give everybody the same thing, and that means the gaps will go away. Well, that won't happen, because if we give everybody the same thing, we'll have the same gaps we've had forever. Part of what we have to understand is that with an equity framework, we're talking about making sure that we give those who need a little bit more additional types of supports. And we're going to talk about what those supports might look like here at PCC, because the reality oftentimes is that those who are at the bottom of the barrel get the least amount of support. And that's what we've got to ask ourselves questions about. We wonder why we have the gaps that we have, and I think we have the gaps that we have for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is we continue to give very little to those who are on the bottom of the barrel. And part of an equity framework says we have to identify where our gaps exist, understand that some students have to come from very difficult circumstances and backgrounds, and if we are going to be honest about it, we're willing to give them additional kinds of supports to begin to create more equitable conditions. That makes sense to folks? So let's talk equity, because I want you to understand that what you're doing is so important that I don't think that folks at community colleges get the recognition that they deserve. You are teaching, serving, and mentoring tomorrow's leaders and lifesavers. I'm going to stress that again, that the individuals that you are working with today will have a profound impact on our society moving forward. Let me unpack some of the data that helps you understand that a little bit more. So here are contributions to the state of California from California community colleges. Just to give you a glimpse, many of you know this, but I think it bears repeating because it shows why the students that you serve are important. California community colleges educate 70% of the state's nurses, right? 70%. So when you go to a doctor, yeah, give a shout out for the folks who prepare nurses, right? You know, when you go to see a doctor, I read an article recently that said that the average doctor spends about 8 minutes with his or her patient. 8 minutes. They want to get you in and get you out. The person who spends most of the time answering your questions, taking your queries, when you got all the aches and pains and hurts and things of that nature, is typically your nurse. Guess what? When you talk about where nurses are prepared, we're talking about places like PCC, okay? We also know that 75% of all California firefighters and law enforcement personnel get some type of training at California community colleges. Big shout out, right? Big shout out, okay? Let's go one step further. 30% of all UC grads where I work, and over half of all CSU grads come from where? California community colleges. That's what you do. That's what you contribute, right? But we're just getting started. Part of what we know that transfers from California community colleges to UC account for half of all those bachelor's degrees that are given in science, technology, engineering, and math. That's what you do. That's what you do. Thank you for your contribution to this pipeline, because it makes a difference, right? I know when I walk on my campus, when I want to see ethnic and racial and linguistic diversity, in all likelihood, if we didn't get them from the community colleges, we would not have them, right? I walk on my campus, and oftentimes I tell folks, if you want to know what California looks like, don't walk on the campus of UCLA. Don't walk on the campus of that other place across the way, right? You like that one, huh? I know I got some fight on folks here, right? But if you want to see what California looks like, come walk on the campus of PCC, right? Come walk on the campus of LACC. Go walk on the campus of Southwest College. That's what California looks like, right? Because that, again, is what truly is reflective of our community. What we also know, 42% of all veterans in this state who receive GI benefits get their training where? Here, California community colleges, right? You train, support, mentor the men and women who defend and fight for our freedom and our liberties, right? And part of what we know is that 80% of all emergency medical technicians are trained and certified where? California community colleges. Look, folks, look. When you are in need, when you pick up that phone in an emergency and you call 911 and you want someone sent out to your house, guess what? In all likelihood, you're going to get somebody to show up who you have trained here. So I tell folks all the time, look, if you work at California Community College, you better treat those students well today because if you don't, they may not treat you well tomorrow, okay? Understand that. What you give is what you get. So that's why we have to be sensitive to what we do. So this is a big contribution. Our state's fabric is shaped by contributions that come from California community colleges. Our economy, our political system, our government, our entrepreneurs are coming from places like PCC. And that's why what you do is important. But what I want to stress with you in my time with you this morning is that your jobs are getting more and more difficult. And your jobs are getting more and more difficult because the circumstances that students are coming from are increasingly difficult. And until we understand some of those challenges, what we're not going to be able to do is kind of meet those gaps that we've talked about earlier. So let's kind of unpack a little bit. I make the argument that students are a product of their circumstances, but they do not have to be defined by them. And that's something I would ask each and every person in this room to stress to your students. You have lots of students who have come from some incredibly, incredibly difficult backgrounds. And they are oftentimes quick to say what they can't do because of their past. You have to remind them of what can be done because their future is ahead of them. Right? You have lots of students who are just what I call just academically and socially, emotionally fragile right now. They are wondering, should I stay in this place? Should I take another semester? Should I keep going? They are this close to saying, you know what, just forget it. I don't need to be bothered with this school thing anymore. What you say to them can make or break their pursuit. I have to pinch myself because I oftentimes am just enamored with the fact that how am I up here doing this? Because in so many cases, I was this close to saying, to hell with it. Right? But it was folks who were at those colleges I mentioned, Southwest College, Compton College, Cerritos College, Long Beach City College, who told me keep pushing. They saw something in me that I did not see in myself. And that's why what you do and what you say to your students can be so life-changing, okay? So let's talk about these products and these circumstances that define our students. Systems and structures matter. And what we see are more systems and structures making life incredibly challenging for our students. And part of what I want us to be mindful of is how we acknowledge some of those issues that our students face. Because if we understood their situations, we might understand why we see what we see. It makes sense to folks? So let's kind of go a little bit deeper. I want to talk about it in 4 areas with regard to academic supports, the social emotional supports, student success and outcomes, and then most importantly, what can we do to help our students overcome these obstacles, okay? So let's start first with this academic snapshot. Cynthia talked about earlier about this big picture academic. I want to show you a few slides, and I swear I won't bore you with a lot of data, but I think it's important here. I'm a former elementary school teacher. I teach a high school class at UCLA every summer. And what frustrates me is this stat right here, right? If you look at NAEP, National Assessment for Educational Progress, 8th grade reading scores. I highlight reading scores because reading tells us a lot about the overall academic success that students will have. I also look at this because by and large, what we know from the data is that if students are not reading at grade level in grade 8, there's a very, very unlikely reality that they'll be reading at grade level by the time they graduate in 12th grade. So if you look at these data, according to NAEP, around proficiency in reading, if you look at that first bar, it tells us that about 42% of white students are reading at proficient levels in grade 8. The inverse of that tells us that 58% are not. That is a huge problem, folks. I don't care how you slice it. When you have any group where over 50% of that population is not reading at grade level, what we call proficient, we should be upset, alarmed, and outraged. But when you look at these data, you see that this is one of the quote-unquote better student outcomes. Look at the next 2 groups on that bar. Those are the bulk of the students that you see here at PCC. So you look at Black and Latino students, the fact that we have 14% of one group and 17% of the other group are reading at a proficient level in the 8th grade is a huge problem. I'm not good at math, but what I think that tells us is that over 80% of them are not at proficient levels when they are in 8th grade. And when you look at these data as these students prepare to graduate, the numbers are even worse. So that's why when you see many of the students who show up here on the campus of PCC, they are woefully behind. Because I said systems and structures do a number on our children. And as someone who taught in schools, I think K-12 schools, by and large, are broken systems for a lot of children. They're broken systems for poor children, and they're broken systems for a lot of Black and brown children in this country. Because what we know and what we do is we know that we have students who struggle with reading concepts as early as first grade, right? And what we do in this country is that we know that you're struggling in first grade with reading, but when you get to the end of first grade, despite the fact that you haven't mastered those concepts, guess what we do? We pass you on to second grade, right? And you go through second grade and you struggle with reading in second grade because you never got the concepts in first grade, but guess what? When you get to the end of second grade, guess what we do then? We pass you to third grade. Now remember, this child never got the concepts in first grade, but we still keep passing students along. This whole notion of social promotion, right? Fourth grade, you struggle in fourth grade. You never got the first grade stuff, but we're going to pass you from fourth grade to fifth grade. This social promotion is a big problem because we have far too many of our students who get to seventh, eighth grade who read at second, third, fourth grade reading levels, right? And guess what? We oftentimes push those students through. They graduate. Many of them can't end up at UC or CSU, so then guess where they end up? In your classrooms, right? They end up on your campus, products of what I call as a broken system that continues to pass children along despite the fact that we know we're not giving them what they need to compete. And we talk about reading because reading tells us not only how students are going to do academically, but reading really in lots of ways tells us how students are going to fare in their life chances. Right? So for all my folks who teach English classes, right, you see this every day, right? Students who are struggling with some of the most basic and simple text. Because, again, products of a broken system. Look at the last line here, right? Our number of language learners, less than 10% are at proficient levels. Our students who are basically low income, less than 20%. Students with disabilities, less than 15%. These are our most marginalized students who were not given the basics of reading literacy to be able to compete in a globalized society. They end up on your campus. That's why I hear students, when I talk to students now on community colleges, you all know, they say, look, when I was younger, if you want to take you took a placement test, and if you didn't do well enough, you took a placement test, you had to take a prerequisite to take English 101, right? Now I hear students say they have to take 3 and 4 and 5 prerequisites to the prerequisite just to get to the English 1, right? Student told me when I was at Sac City a couple months ago, he said it took him 2 years to get to the basic English. 2 years. And I said, well, did you take a year off? He said, no, I had to take that many prerequisites and I couldn't pass them, right? This is what we're doing to our students when you got a broken K-12 system. That's why what you do is so valuable, because you're responding to this situation here, okay? You go one step further. Let's look at our math folks. A lot of the same data here. Look at the same groups who struggle. For all my folks who teach math, you see students who come in woefully behind, struggling with some of the most basic of math concepts, right? Again, products of a broken system that continues to disadvantage a lot of poor children, black and brown children, students who don't speak English as their primary language, students who have disabilities. Uh-oh, I did something wrong there. Okay. Students who have all kinds of challenges. There we go. So when we see students who struggle in math, this is why. That's why it's amazing to me that we have so many of our students at the UC and the Cal State who have STEM degrees, because that means many of you in this room took this and helped to get those students where they are now, where they graduate with degrees in these fields. That's making a significant difference, right? You know, it's one thing to be on the faculty at UCLA and take students who come in as freshmen who are already on top of things, and basically you don't have to do a whole lot, right? But something different to take students who come with this kind of background and help them to get to the point where they can transfer. That's making a big difference, all right? Now, give yourselves a big round of applause for that. So now I say, lately I've been doing this reading on attribution theory, because part of what frustrates me is when we see these data right here, and I talk to folks about why we see these data, folks tell me, well, it's just because these students don't value education. These students don't work hard enough. These students are not motivated. These students are not disciplined. It's to blame the student, blame the student, blame the student. Now, I'll be the first to admit that students have some responsibility in this. I cannot deny that. But what frustrates me is that when there's so much of the responsibility, or all of the responsibility is placed on the students and not the systems and structures that have failed them, I think that's a faulty argument, right? So that's why this work I've been doing lately around attribution theory has been speaking to me, because basically what attribution theory tells us is that we are always looking to understand the reasons we give for our own and others' behaviors, okay? I got my psychology folks out here. If I mess this up, please don't hold it to, don't talk it to my head, talk it to my heart, talk it to my head, okay? Now, as I understand at a very novice level, what attribution theory tells us that we are motivated to understand the causes of behavior. Why do people do what they do, right? If we understand why people do what they do, then we can start providing the kind of interventions that will allow them or that will lead them to do the things that we want them to do, right? So we're always trying to understand this with our students, with our kids, with our significant others, right? Why won't he or why won't she do what we ask them to do? But psychologists say there's a big mistake that we tend to make when it comes to attribution theory, right? And the big mistake is the following. They tell us that we tend to overestimate the power of the person and underestimate the power of the situation. I'll say that again. Psychologists say we put a lot of focus on the individual and we don't look enough at the situation. What does that mean for me? I interpret that to mean that here in this country, we love the story of rugged individualism, do we not? Pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Never mind the fact I may not have boots, right? Never mind the fact that if I do have boots, they may not have straps, right? We say pull yourself up by the bootstraps, put your nose to the grindstone. How many folks have heard that one? Yeah, I'm not sure what a grindstone is, but we're told to put our nose to it, right? Put your nose to the grindstone, don't make excuses, work hard, you can accomplish anything. We love the story of the person who comes to this country with nothing but lint in their pocket and they go on to become wildly successful. And we say, guess what, if she did it, that means the rest of you can do it as well, right? And then if you don't do it, what's the message that means? You're a big loser, right? Because that person did it, you should be able to do it, right? So part of what psychologists, I think, are trying to tell us that, look, the individual personal responsibility piece, yes, that plays a role, but guess what? Our situations are far more important than we want to acknowledge. So the question becomes, what is that situation for our students? But let's go one step further. Before we get to the situation for our students, what I want us to ask is this. Why do we make this fundamental error? And this is where psychologists really get us. They say, look, why we make this fundamental error is that because the situation is not important when people make attributions for the behavior of others. But the situation is important when making attributions for one's own behaviors. Come on, somebody should say hallelujah on that one, right? Jumped up and shouted. That is a heavy statement right there. What is that telling us? That's telling us that we are hypocrites, right? That we want you to understand our stuff, but I don't want to understand your stuff. Can't have it that way. When I was growing up in Compton, we called that two-facedness, right? I don't think facedness is a word, but we use it, right? You can't speak out your neck on one side saying one thing and do something else on the flip side, okay? I saw this play out in a school just about, 2 months ago. I was in an elementary school. The bell rang at 8:30 for kids to show up in the class, right? About 8:35, this young boy walked in, late. Teacher said, you're late, go get a late pass. He said, let me tell you what happened. She said, I don't want to hear it. You're late, go get a late pass. He said, but first, let me try to explain to you. She said, go get a late pass. He said, please, let me try to tell you. Hey, she said, go get a late pass. So he stormed out the classroom, and he came back about 5 minutes later with his late pass, and he slammed it on her desk, and he went and sat down. He was upset because he didn't get a chance to say what had happened, right? So I was at the school for an entire day, right? So at 1:30, we started a professional development session for all the teachers. You know where this is going, right? At 1:30, our PD started. 1:30, 1:30, half an hour before 2 o'clock. At 1:30, there was a particular teacher who was not present. About 1:50, that's 20 minutes after we started. Somebody came barging in the room. I'm so sorry, I had to make a phone call to check on my daughter. I then had to go get some copies of something made for tomorrow. Then I also had to check on her. You know, she would give me every excuse in the world. You know what I wanted to say to her, right? Go get your late pass. Where's your late pass, right? So what psychologists tell us is that we want you to understand us, right? I was late this morning because traffic was a bear. I spilled coffee on my lap. My dog ate my something or other. We always have excuses and explanations for our stories, which is fine. But then when our students have them, we don't want to hear those to the same degree. I'm asking us for consistency, folks. Consistency, because if we understand the situation of our students just a little bit, we might have a little more patience. We might have a little more empathy. we might have a little more compassion for some of the challenges that they're facing, okay? So let's dig deeper into what the situation is for our students, okay? What is the situation for our students? I want to give you a snapshot, if I can, of classrooms across LA County. And I have a group of doctoral students. We work on these data every single year, and we basically take the numbers and we crunch them down to a classroom of 30, because this is the feeder system that comes to PCC, okay? And so what we do is we take all the students across LA County. There's about 1.3 million students between the ages of 5 and 18 in Los Angeles County. So some of these numbers are higher in some parts of the county, some of them are lower, but it gives you a snapshot of what you're facing. And this is the situation I think we oftentimes don't understand. What we know is that 10 out of the 30 students would live in poverty, 1 out of 3 across LA County. In some parts, that number is 30 out of 30. But part of what we have to understand is that poverty is one of the biggest challenges to helping students succeed, right? It is a challenge, but it does not mean that it's impossible, because if that meant that poor kids could not succeed, I would not be standing up here right now in front of you. And I'm willing to bet a lot of you would not be in this room either if poverty was a sentence for failure educationally. So if anybody's here who believes that poor kids can't learn or that poor folks don't have the ability to achieve, you should just walk out now. We won't hold it against you. We'll just escort you out. We'll probably applaud as you leave, right? But the bottom line is you cannot subscribe to this, because poor folks have just as much ability to be successful as anybody else. Are there obstacles? Absolutely. But I maintain that you talk to me about poor children or poor folks, they oftentimes have a sixth sense that we don't evaluate, because poor folks have to figure out how to do what? Survive, make a way out of no way, right? Find the possible out of the seemingly impossible, right? So part of what we have to recognize, you have students who are showing up in your classrooms and on your campus who have faced some of the most abject types of poverty. That makes learning challenging in lots of different ways. What we also know is that in our classroom, 3 will live in what's considered extreme poverty. What is extreme poverty, you might ask? A household of 4 or more on an income of $10,000 or less, right? And last time I checked, we live in Los Angeles County, which is one of the more expensive counties in the entire United States of America. Average rents in this county are about $850. Now again, I'm not good at math, but if you're making $10,000 a year, that don't add up if your rents are $850, right? This is the reality. Let's go one step further. What we know is that 25 of the students would be non-white. Guess what, folks? We are a changing country, right? And some folks are excited about that. Some folks are just angry as all get out about that, right? And I'm saying if we don't recognize that when you walk on this campus and see the black and brown students that you see, this is our newfound reality. This is not a one-year fad. This is not just a one-year phase. This is who we are, okay? I was at a school, I mean, it just blows my mind to think, folks, I was at a high school just, 2 years ago, a year ago. I asked the principal, tell me what you're doing around diversity. He said, oh, we did diversity last year. We're focusing on technology this year, right? Can't do it that way. Diversity is here to stay. And look, if we don't talk about the reality that looking at our gaps are telling us that some students, in particular black, Latino, and Southeast Asian students aren't getting the same thing as other students are, right? So we have to have this conversation about race because we're uncomfortable having the conversation about race despite the fact that we need to have it. That's for part 2 of this conversation, okay? Let's stay in our classroom. 15, half would not speak English as their primary language, or they would live with an adult whose primary language is not English. So again, we got a linguistic reality that we have to come to grips with. And what we know from the data is that this is one of the more underserved groups that we are not serving well. And yet they still show up on campuses like yours looking for support, looking for help, looking for guidance, okay? We also know that 5 of the students will not be reared by their biological parents. They're reared by who? Grandparents, foster parents, older siblings, an uncle, an aunt, a friend's parent, right? They're moving from place to place to place without any kind of consistent living arrangement, okay? 1 of the 30 students will be homeless, right? My hunch is that you have lots of these students on your campus right now. Students who probably, unbeknownst to many of us in this room, probably live on this campus, right? They find places on roofs. They will go to places where they find a gym. They find somewhere where they can lay their head down. All their belongings are in that backpack that they carry, right? So I say understand the situation. The Cal State system just did a study a couple of months ago, and they found that 10% of all students in the CSU system were homeless. 10%. And my first reaction was, if 10% of all students in the Cal State system are homeless, what is it for the California community system? What is it in places like PCC? It's got to be higher than 10%. So my hunch is that you probably have students who are living in shelters, who are living in cars, who are living on the streets. So that's why, again, I ask you to be a little bit more empathetic, a little bit more patient, a little bit more understanding, right? Because these are students who are trying their best to try to hold it together, but they are oftentimes on the brink of just saying, I can't do this anymore. Because you've got students who are not just themselves homeless. Some of you have students, and you know this, who are children who are homeless with them. So it's 3, 4 people, right, that they have no way of finding out where they can get some decent shelter for them, right? This is the reality for lots of the students that you serve. And then the part that we don't talk about, but this is also something that plays out into your situation. We know 7 of those 30 students will be victims of some type of sexual, physical, verbal, or emotional abuse before turning 18. And according to data from the Department of Children and Family Services, for every one case that we know about, there's another case that should be reported, but that has not been. So that means we're talking about almost half, right? Almost half. So you get lots of young people and older people who walk onto this campus who are dealing with lots of stuff. Remember, underestimate the power of the person, underestimate the power of the situation, right? So you add up these things. Some of the students that you teach, some of them have all these things affected them. They were poor, they were homeless, they were language learners, right? They may have been victims of some type of abuse. You talk to folks who are in social work, they will tell you some of these god-awful situations that kids have to go through, right? All this stuff leads to lots of what? Trauma, right? You have a lot of young people, old people, and everybody in between who are suffering from trauma. I've been asking folks on community colleges that you should have, I would hope you have at least a staff of 200 school psychologists here. Do you have like 200? Is it a joke? Wow, this is what I'm finding every place. We need to have lots of school psychologists, lots of therapists on the campus, because you're dealing with lots of folks who have untreated trauma, right? You have students who show up and you just say good morning, they are snapping off at you just from the moment go, right? Angry, upset. Trauma is real. We know that, look, trauma has an effect on cognitive and social-emotional development, right? We need mental health supports en masse on some of our campuses, en masse, because students are walking around. I oftentimes refer to them as ticking time bombs, trying to hold it together, and sometimes it's just one thing that just sends them over the edge, right? And then we know this trauma is tied to the social emotional well-being of our students. See, part of what we have to recognize that it's hard to help students move along the lines academically if they're not well socially and emotionally, right? We all took Psychology 101. Maslow's hierarchy of needs tells us what? That until the most basic of needs are met, safety, protection, well-being, that you're going to have a hard time getting anything up here. That's why I have so much admiration for students at community colleges, because they are trying every single day, despite all kinds of obstacles in their way, to be the best that they can be. They could easily give up and walk away because life oftentimes has dealt them a bad hand. But they're still trying. They still show up in your classes. They still show up on this campus, trying to find a way to improve their lot in life. And for that, I give them so much credit, because it's so easy to just say, to hell with it. Give up, stop, okay? So now, some of this stuff is single incident trauma. For some of our students, one incident sends them off the rails. They never recover, right? Lose a loved one, lose a child, lose a parent, lose a friend, and not have it treated. Big issue, right? For some of our students, they have complex or repetitive trauma. That's all they know is trauma, because it happens time and time again, right? One of the things we found with a lot of the students that we work with at UCLA, women in particular, women of color in particular, they were in these abusive situations, right? Where they were constantly blaming themselves for being the victims of other person's physical abuse toward them, right? Big problem. We have to address that. Developmental trauma. Some of the students that we are working with, they've been dealing with trauma from day one. And it's been so normalized in their lives, they can't think of anything beyond what they know in terms of what that trauma looks like, okay? And then we have what's called intergenerational trauma. When I was teaching, I would have students, and I saw this summer, you sometimes look at a young person and think, good, what could have happened with this child, right? Then you meet the parent. It explains everything, right? It explains it all because it's intergenerational trauma, right? The young person is dealing with the trauma because her parent was dealing with the trauma that never got treated because her parent was dealing with the trauma. So you got 3, 4, 5 generations of trauma that have all continued to be this vicious cycle, right? Then you also have this historical trauma, where you got some groups where their entire sets of experiences in this country have been fraught with discrimination and bias and exclusion, right? Women, undocumented folks, folks of color, queer folks, right? We have sent them a message for so long that you don't matter and you're on the margins. So understand this trauma is real, and this trauma shows up on your campus, and it shows up in your classroom. And one of my concerns when it comes to trauma, and this is what I would ask you to think about, for many students, and I'm going to make this specific about students of color, there's a message that we sometimes hear that it is a sign of weakness to go get help around therapy. You have to challenge that every single day with your students. It is a sign of strength to go get help. It is not a sign of weakness. I talk to lots of students of color who say, I can't go no therapy. I'm not going to a shrink. I'm not crazy. I say, you crazy if you don't go, right? We have to stress to students that, look, you need help. It's okay to get help. I've sat in my share of psychologist rooms, like I'm sure many of you have. I think we have to help to demystify mental health support for our students. Because many of them think, well, I'm just going to go to church and pray. And that's fine. You can pray. But guess what? Your pastor does not have the training to help you deal with some of the deep-seated issues that you might be dealing with tied to trauma. It makes sense to folks? So trauma is real. Recommend your students to go seek mental health support services, right? Everyone in this room should know where the psychological support services building are, because you should be referring students there, because some of you right now, as I'm describing this, there are certain students that you're thinking about who you are saying right now, you know what, that child needs to go like now, right? That person needs to go like tomorrow, right? So I'm saying, I can tell you there have been lots of times where I've stopped and said, time out. I see a student talking to me about some things that I know are quite troublesome, where that person could be harmful to either him or herself or to someone else. I said, well, let's go take a walk. I will walk you over to psychological support services, because sometimes that's what it takes, okay? Now, some of the things that contribute to trauma, all this stuff up here, poverty, abuse, exposure to death and violence, lack of safety, displacement, discrimination. These are things that students are facing and dealing with every single day, right? So I ask you to understand their situation, because oftentimes they can't quite articulate it, but what we see, some of the research tells us that folks who suffer from trauma have some of the same kinds of characteristics as folks who have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, right? So again, the academic part can't get right because I got so much other stuff going on around the trauma. We have to have these conversations. Our work is going to be more difficult unless we address this, okay? Now, let me tell you why I'm also concerned about this, because now there's research on what's called secondary trauma. Secondary trauma. Guess who that affects? Look to the person to your left. Look at the person to your right. Now what we have is research that tells us that folks who are in situations where they're always dealing with folks who are in trauma, guess what starts to happen? You take on the trauma. You take on the stress, and you don't even realize it, right? Some of you are trying to deal with everybody's problems, right? The students come to you day in, day out. Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? Sometimes how many times do you feel like just spent at the end of the day, just exhausted? And I'm talking about on a Monday, right? And you're already just beat because you are suffering in all likelihood from secondary trauma. When you're always putting out fires for folks, always problem solving for folks, always helping folks deal with their issues, you start to take on this more so than you realize. So tell the person to your left or to your right, tell her or him right now, take care of yourself. Cannot stress this enough, because some of you are on a quest to save the world, right? You show up early, you stay late, right? Students who have any kind of problem, they come knocking on your door. How many times have you been in the process of saying, okay, I'm done with the day, I'm just gonna walk from my office to my car, uninterrupted, right? You try to tiptoe out, right? And then that student sees you, and guess what? They just swarm on you. They say, can I take a few minutes of your time? And then an hour later, you're still sitting there with that student. And some of you do this so well that once the students find out that you help people, guess what they do? They go tell everybody else, right? And you get like a swarm of students who all come because they see somebody's willing to help them. And that's a great thing. And I applaud you for doing that. But I'm asking you, self-care is important. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't be a benefit to anybody, right? We have all these folks who are on stress leave, disability leave, right? Burnout, because you're always giving. I tell you, when you deal with folks who have lots of stress and lots of trauma, this is what happens right here to you. So you've got to make sure you take care of yourself. I'm going to ask you one more time. Look at that person next to you. Say, take care of yourself. I'm going to keep stressing that. Take care of yourself. I saw a study recently that said that the group of professionals with the highest rates of alcoholism are psychologists. Yep, you know why? Because if you deal with people's problems all the time, guess what starts to happen to you? You start feeling like the weight of the world. I don't know where college folks are on there, but we're probably in the top 5 somewhere, right? Because for a lot of you, you know what you do is not solely about teaching your content. A lot of your time is spent counseling your students about life, right? About helping them to problem solve, helping them to find a way to find financial aid, to find shelter, to find a job, right? So much of what probably many of us in this room do is around just life counseling. So just be careful of that, because in some cases, what happens is that students become dependent upon you. They need you every single day they come into a problem. And so you got to have some clear boundaries to make sure while you're supporting students, you don't want them to get to the point where they're so dependent on you, they think that you're the person who's supposed to fix all their ills, okay? So let's keep moving on through the line. So what can you do, right? So first and foremost, I think we have to help the student understand that trauma is not normal. Like I said, some of our students, that's all they've known their entire lives, right? Build relationships, but be honest and tell students what you can and you cannot do, okay? If you can meet with a student after class for an hour, okay, that's fine, but beyond that, I can't do it. Some of you in this room, if I got part-time faculty, you're going between 3 and 4 different colleges. They call you the freeway faculty, right? You're going from place to place to place. Be honest, be straightforward, understand trauma. I think everybody in this room needs to understand the effects of trauma because it's part of all of our realities, okay? Help individuals feel safe through nurture, structured support, and use boundaries and logical consequences. I can't stress this one enough. Because sometimes you're helping a student misreads that to mean something that it is not, right? They think, okay, he helps me every time I have a problem, then I show up and you're not there. Where are you? I need you. You're supposed to help fix my life. No, I'm not supposed to do that. So make sure you establish boundaries that are logical and understand the consequences if you do not, okay? What else do we need to do? Look, understand that trauma leads to illogical behavior. Can't stress that one enough. Sometimes you have this student that you have bent over backwards for. You have made additional time for, and then this student shows up one day and he or she just blows up at you. You're thinking, whoa, I'm the person who's helped you, and now you're angry with me because oftentimes trauma leads to illogical behavior. It's irrational. There's no rhyme or reason to it because sometimes folks misdirect their anger and frustration in the wrong places. That make sense? How many times have we seen this, right? With students, just behavior that just defies logic, okay? Co-regulate with the person. Sometimes some people have what we might see as small problems, but they see them as just massive issues, right? And part of what you may have to do is help them to co-regulate, to help them understand, look, let's take care of problem A first, then problem B second, then problem C third. Let's just do those 3 things first. Sometimes for some folks, for some of our students, it's so overwhelming, they don't know where to start because there's so many things happening, okay? Don't take behavior personally. You will get called lots of names sometimes. Don't act like I'm the only one. I get called names. I know some of you get called names, right? Because students want to hear certain things, and if you can't tell them what they want to hear, then you're the problem, okay? Don't take it personally. Understand the situation oftentimes has caused a student to feel so defeated and so depressed and so dejected that somebody's going to be the butt of all that frustration and anger, okay? Offer concrete steps and strategies, as I talked about a moment ago. Know your resources. Everyone, point in the direction of where your psychological support services office is. Let me see if everybody points the right way. Okay, good. I see it. Most folks pointing. Somebody went that way, and I don't think that's the right way. We should all know where it's at. We should all know who the staff are there. We should all have the emails to the staff there. We should all have them on speed dial as well, because you may need to refer students there. You know, and I say this, but in all seriousness, let me tell you something, folks. We had a very unfortunate incident that happened on the campus of UCLA last year, where a student became angry with the professor, and I'm sure you all saw this, and sought out the professor and sadly killed him, and then was in pursuit of another professor, but that person wasn't on campus that day. And the building where this happened was right next door to mine, so I oftentimes go to that building, you know, on my way to and from my office. So I know a few of the engineering faculty there, and in talking to some of the faculty there, what they said to me was the fact that the individual who committed this act, lots of faculty had concerns about him. He exhibited behavior that was not typical behavior. He acted in very strange ways. He acted in ways that were not typical of college students. And they shared me, it was kind of common knowledge. But the reality is nobody intervened. Nobody said anything. Nobody tried to talk to the individual, as far as I've been told, to try to help him get the help that he needed. And so sadly enough, what happens is that the person, the faculty member who lost his life, I mean, that individual is no longer here, and there is a woman who has lost her husband. There are children who have lost their father. And it's just a sad story, despite the fact that there were all these warning signs around this individual student. And part of what happens oftentimes when we have these unfortunate situations is that after the fact, people say, you know what, there was always something a little bit strange about that person's behavior, always something a little bit different. And I'm asking us here to be a little bit more thoughtful about what that means, because if you do this work long enough, we oftentimes come into contact with students who have mental health issues. And we tend to think it's not my problem. Somebody else will deal with it. It's not my issue. Somebody else will address it. But then when that happens, nobody addresses it. And when nobody addresses it, it rises to the level where someone gets hurt. So that's why we have to take some steps, because there are students on our campuses who are hurting, who are struggling, and who need intervention ASAP. So when you see those kinds of behaviors, talk to someone. Try to get the appropriate help, because sometimes it could be a matter of saving someone's life. So can that be something we think about moving forward? All right, thank you. Let's keep going. Now, so here's what I want you to do: to know, care, and act. Understand that the students that you see suffer from lots of institutional damage, okay? They also suffer from societal and family damage, okay? Part of what we see students struggling from is not oftentimes their own doing, but the circumstances around them. Accessibility, trying to understand how to navigate systems and structures, is oftentimes so overwhelming that students just feel paralyzed. And then I want you to understand the resilience that they show. And that's the point that we have to understand, that these students are still trying every single day. I told you, I went to 4 different community colleges, right? I just kept thinking somehow, some way I'm gonna figure this thing out. And it helped to have folks in the registrar's office who said, okay, do A, B, and C. Sometimes just having someone greet you with a smile makes your day. Someone who tells you you can do this gives you more confidence, because what you're dealing with oftentimes, we have to be mindful of this, is that students' resiliency is a strength, right? We need folks to tell us that we can. We need folks to affirm. We need folks to appreciate. We need folks to acknowledge that we are doing the things that will help us to get to where we want to get to, okay? Resiliency is huge. Tell these students that they're doing all the right things. If they keep going, they may not have passed that class this semester, but maybe they'll pass it next semester, right? Maybe instead of taking 4 classes this semester, you should take 3 instead, right? Give them some concrete steps and strategies, because a lot of students are suffering from the imposter syndrome, right? Part of what we know is that, look, this is a syndrome that when people are unable to internalize their accomplishments. So lots of our students can tell you all the things that they cannot do, what they've fallen short of, but they don't realize that they're still doing some things by showing up every semester, right? The imposter syndrome, look, folks, is real. It affects folks where they feel like, I do not belong to be here, right? I don't belong here. Every time I talk about the imposter syndrome, I think sometimes I'm talking about me, right? How many of us in this room oftentimes feel like we're imposters, right? Like, do I really belong in front of people talking? Do I really think I have any expertise, right? So when you have students who are fraught with the imposter syndrome, let me sit in the back of the class, not say anything, because if I open my mouth, they might say, why is he here, right? Imposter syndrome is real, right? We think that we're oftentimes deceiving others. We feel like we're frauds. There's a lot of imposter syndrome in here. I'm telling you, we all struggle with it. So we have to help build up our students. Oftentimes associated with folks who are academics, that two groups suffer most from imposter syndrome. Two groups, women and folks of color, are the folks who oftentimes doubt themselves the most when it comes to any kinds of success. Despite all the things you're doing that shows you're on the right track, despite all the accomplishments that you have, despite all that you've achieved, despite all that you're doing, you're still quick to talk about what you haven't done, right? I'm asking you to tell your students, look, you have done lots of things. You continue to make progress, one step, one class, one semester at a time. You're getting closer to your goal. You're getting closer to your objective. You can get there, okay? So other steps you can take, affirm often, right? Affirm often. Tell your students that they are doing things that are worthy of their efforts. Build their confidence, stress their resilience, right? All these things we talk about. Share your stories. I maintain that we don't think we tend to minimize our stories because we tend to think they're just our stories. They're important because many of you have gone through some of the same trials and tribulations that your students have gone through. Talk about what you've gone through and how you've gotten through it. The other thing I would stress is that this is all about care, right? This is our future. Told you, if we don't take care of them today, guess what, folks? They're not going to take care of us tomorrow. We got to be very much clear about that process. So here are some steps I hope that we'll be taking today, and I'm glad you're already spending today to focus on some of these topics. So some of the things we need to be mindful of is investigate outcomes by race and ethnicity. I love the fact that Cynthia said we're looking at data and we see that certain groups are doing better than others when it comes to completion, transfer, right? Equity means we have to focus on those groups who seem to be getting less, and how can we get them what they need to be successful? Examine this chronic underperformance of certain groups. Some groups have been doing poorly for 5, 10, 15 years straight, and we need to ask, what are we doing? What did they say? The surest sign of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. We got to do something different if we want to help those groups. A lot of our first-gen students, look at the data there, we see a lot of them struggle because this is a whole new reality. They don't have the luxury of going home to talk to somebody about taking college classes because they're the first in their families to ever do it. So look at the data across those particular groups. Look at transfer certificate completion data, right? Not everyone's trying to transfer. Some folks are trying to get that completion, that certificate completed, right? Data tells us a big, big, important story. Support services, where are they? Where can students get academic support? Where do they get financial aid support? Where do they get counseling support, right? We have like what, hopefully we had about 300-400 counselors here. Wow, huh? That's the other thing I hear from students all the time, right? They say to see a counselor is a challenge, right? Where are my counselors at? Do I see any counselors in here today? Thank you, right? Counselors saved my life because sometimes just talking to counselors and they just made it seem doable, right? Faculty saved my life because they said, yes, you can add this course despite the fact that I said I wasn't going to add anybody else, right? Also, who's in the basic skills courses, right? Overwhelmingly, we see the same groups in the basic skills courses and they take forever to get out. And some of them don't get out. You have students who are working 2 jobs, raising kids, taking classes, and they're just trying to find a way to keep it all together. Your words and encouragement and supports can go a long way, okay? And then develop strategic plans and interventions informed by student recommendations. Talk to students. Ask what they need. Talk to students. Find out what has helped them. Talk to some of your students who have transferred and say, what was it that was instrumental in you being successful here at PCC? I think the more we talk to our students, the more we begin to understand how we can best serve them, okay? And so look, everybody has a role in equity. And this is what your day is about today. Doesn't matter what your position is. You can provide equity support in the classroom. You can provide equity support when it comes to leadership, looking at what does our leadership team and staff look like. You can provide equity when it comes to hiring. Who are we hiring? Who are we not hiring and why? You can also provide equity when it comes to just the overall campus climate. Do students feel welcome here? Do they feel like they are seen here? Okay? You can also provide equity when it comes to the infrastructure, right? The ways in which we provide access and opportunities across the board. And then also with customer service. Sometimes, I'm telling you folks, if you are just the person who greets students when they come onto this campus, your smile or your frown sends a loud message to students about whether or not they're welcome. Because some students have to build up a lot of courage just to show up at the registrar's office, just to show up at the financial aid office, just to show up in your class. They're thinking, do I really want to be here? If one person just tells me one thing that's negative, that's all I need to say, you know what, I'm out of here. So you can say that one thing that tells a student, okay, it's worth taking another step. And then after I take one step, if somebody else encourages me, I can take a second step, okay? So equity, everybody plays a role. Each person here has to find out, what's my role? Look, folks, then tell your student the dream is free, but the hustle is sold separately, okay? Tell your students how bad do they want it, right? They got to work hard. They're going to have setbacks, but I tell my students all the time, a setback is a setup for a comeback. So part of what you have to help our students understand is that, look, this is not going to happen overnight. I'm concerned about this generation of millennials because they need everything now, right? Now. How do I get it now? If I can't get it now, is it worth having? You have to be honest with them and say, look, anything that's worth having is going to take some time and some struggle, and there will be setbacks along the way, but it is possible, right? But at the end of the day, the question I ask is, what is the lens you are using to see our students? Some of us have to readjust our lens because some of us see first-generation students as not being capable. Some of us see students of color not having the intellect to succeed. Some of us see undocumented students as not being worthy of our time. I'm asking us to all readjust our lens, to use an equity lens to see the possible success of every student we come into contact with, to see the promise of each and every student who steps foot on our campus. You've got to use a lens that says, I see what you can do. I see what you have done. I'm not focused on those things that you have not done. I'm not focused on your shortcomings. I'm focused on your strengths. Use the lens that sees promise and potential as the norm, not as a surprise. Use the lens that says that each and every student here, if they put forth their effort and do their job, we'll do everything on our side to make sure we meet them halfway to ensure their success, okay? Don't look at our students as sort of blobs that have no detail, because some of us, we use the lens that's wrong. When you look at this, right, what do you see? Cow, thank you. Everybody sees a cow, right? Like cow? No. Look deep. Look beyond the surface. Look for the details. I see her, she said, I still don't see a cow up there, right? Our students are not a blank canvas. If we look deep at their stories, if we hear their struggles, if we understand their challenges, we look deep, we see there's a lot of formation there. It's like, I still don't see the cow, right? Okay, look. I messed up again, right? Took the cow away from you. There we go. There's our cow friend, right? I use this picture because I think the same thing exists with our students, right? Some of us just look at them and we don't see anything there. But if we look deeper, if we listen more to them, right? My grandmother always said there's a reason why you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, to listen twice as much as you talk, right? Listen more. There's also a reason why listen and silent have the same letters in them, right? You still trying to show her the cow? She's still struggling. Okay, look. Here's the nose right here, right? Got it? There's one eye up there. Another eye up there. She's like, I give up, right? Okay. So at the end of the day, we have to see these students as all of our students, okay? This is the picture we want to see. Make this our lens. This should be the picture we should have up across our campus to tell our students not if you finish, but when you finish. Envision walking across that stage with that certificate. Imagine walking across that stage with that degree in hand. That's the goal here, right? You want to stress that to your students. Tell them, write the date down and then talk about it and play it up, right? Envision you with all your family in the audience, so when your name is mentioned, you walk across that stage and you do all the stuff that you work for, right? Because for a lot of our families, when they walk across that stage, it's more than just them. It's about just all the folks who've invested in them, right? I remember when I finally graduated from college, I remember them telling us that we got 4 tickets for commencement. I was like, 4 tickets is not gonna work for my family, right? You don't know my people, right? Because first and foremost, when you graduate, everybody wants to take some success, want to take credit, right? I changed your diapers, boy, when you were 7 years old. Let's hope I wasn't wearing diapers at 7 years old, right? I was like, 4 tickets is not gonna work. And the guy said, you get 4 tickets, that's it. I said, okay, well, who's gonna be manning the door? Because I want them to deal with my family. I got about 40 folks showing up here, right? And I bet you all of them get in, right? So look, this is our lens. This is what we're working for. Let's do everything in our power every day to give every student some hope, some semblance of possibility, to tell them that they matter, that we see their promise, we see their effort, we see their hard work, we see their struggle, we see their resilience, the more we tell our students what is possible, it becomes part of their reality, right? Self-fulfilling prophecy. When you have someone tell you over and over again what you can do, you start to believe it. All it takes is one person. One person. Doesn't matter what your role is. Doesn't matter what your title is. Doesn't matter what your degree level is. When you offer that support and you offer encouragement, that becomes our lens. So thank you very much for all that you do. Let's make a difference for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyrone. That was awesome. Thank you so much for helping us and being inspirational. I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia Oligo.
I also just want to thank all of you for your commitment. Let this be the day that we make it our priority as a college for an ongoing commitment to closing achievement gaps and achieving equity for all of our students. Thank you very much.